Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. I am the Calm Scribe. This is the Scribe's Journey. I'm being joined by Billy, aka Sporkle McSpork, and we are going to be discussing, again, Wheel of Time, and tonight we're discussing episode 5 of season 1 of Wheel of Time. How are you tonight, Billy, and welcome. Thank you for joining me again.
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. As you know, I love talking about the Wheel of Time, so I'm just overly excited.
That's the way we want it to be. I'm overly excited as well. And especially after this episode. This episode was not like the rest. This one was different, where we had a lot more world building, character development, and kind of just setting the stage for a lot of stuff to come down the road. What were your overall thoughts of the episode this week? Or last week?
Yeah, last week, I guess, technically. I thought it was very good. I will admit it did take me 2 sit-downs, 2 watch-throughs in order to thoroughly understand everything that happened. It was just there was just so much, and these episodes of this show just continued to just pack so much second to second, scene to scene. And I didn't feel like I got enough the first time that I saw it, and the second time really helped boost my opinion of the episode.
Yeah, I have to say, I started this as when I knew I was doing After the Weave. I was going to watch, but the plan was to watch the episode for enjoyment and then watch it again and take notes, and just so I'd have talking points and things. And I was excited to do that because I thought it's a lot of fun. However, there's so many subtleties and little things hidden in this that I watched it like a hawk the first time through, and watching it the second time through, I learned so much more. So I think you can bypass the main stuff the second time and watch the hidden stuff in the background, which they have so much of. I can't, like you said, I can't believe how much they cram into each and every episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this episode, especially because it was a little bit lighter on traveling and all the action, it was even more important just to take a break and look at all of that stuff that they crammed in there.
Definitely. And I think that's what we're going to do tonight, is kind of take a look at that and take a look at some of what they did cram in and go through. And I mean, the episode started with a funeral. I saw a trailer actually on Wednesday. I saw a trailer for the episode the Wednesday before, and just watching the trailer, my jaw was on my chest. I was like, there's so much stuff that's going to be happening, and I didn't know if I was expecting a lot of that stuff to be happening later on in the series, because this was just so much in the trailer. But no, it was all from that one episode. And cram stuff in they did. So it started off with a funeral, and it was bookended with a funeral. What were your thoughts of how they did that with the 2 funerals? So there was the Aes Sedai funeral, and then there was the Warder version of the funeral.
Yeah, I thought the funerals were very well done. The first funeral didn't feel as impactful to me, just because the deaths are a week old now. But I thought it was very interesting to see just the solemn way that the Aes Sedai were being put to rest. The fact that they were giving so much respect to even people that they were fighting against when they buried them as well. Because one of the scenes you do see specifically the king, who we saw in cahoots with Loghain's army a couple episodes ago, being put down because he did in fact die during this fight. And then the raw emotion that you come from the last one.
Yeah, and we'll discuss the last funeral a little bit later on, and that's the thing that I found. I found the same thing, the respect that was involved, and so it's interesting to have the Children of the Light calling them witches and evil and all this stuff, and then even throughout this series, you've already got this sensation that the Aes Sedai are not very liked by a lot of people, but they do have these practices and respect that they hold deeply and they can carry on with. One thing that I found was a bit distracting, and I think it was obviously for cinematography and for the shots, but
Yep.
the whole time I was watching that first funeral scene, I was like, why are the bodies so close to the surface? The frost is just going to shove the bodies up out of the ground.
Yeah, there were two things that I was very distracted by, especially the first time that I saw it, and it was the shallowness of their graves, but also how much white cloth they randomly had on hand for these burial shrouds.
Yeah, that was a lot. Like, I don't know if they're anticipating that, or that's something we should look
Uh,
into. I actually didn't catch that. That's very true. There was
yeah,
a lot. And I'm also kind of curious. I want to do a little bit of digging. It seems to me like there might be some significance behind the way the bodies were laid out. To be
yeah.
cast out in
I
concentric circles like that, like there was very specific.
I got the same sense, but didn't have any idea of what it could be symbolizing.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it could be the wheel and spokes,
Right, but
right?
don't know for sure.
Yeah, so that's something I'm going to dig into a little bit, I think, because I'm very curious with that. The other thing that this episode did, that was very good, is it completely crystallized the bond between a warder and an Aes Sedai, and how
Absolutely.
strong it is, and why it's stronger than a bond between a husband and wife, or a father and child, or a mother and child. And I thought they
I
did that great.
um I agree, and I think that Steppen as a character who, to me, I feel like is a fresh character. Um, I thought that his character arc is just it's very interesting and very powerful. You kind of go through everything with him. In the last episode, you get to meet this jovial, fun guy at the campfire, but you also get to see how serious he takes his job when he's training and doing maneuvers with Lan, and then you get to see the heartbreak of a warder outliving their Aes Sedai, and then thinking that's the end of his character arc. This episode makes it go even further.
Yeah, and they actually have a couple of branches and a couple of red herrings for what's going to happen, and then it goes through. But that was one of the things that I really, 'cause again, this show really functions on subtleties, and something I found to be very interesting with this episode was the fact, or the past couple episodes with Stepan and Kirene, his Aes Sedai, is that it's been explained to this point and shown quite clearly with Alana and her warders that greens are an Aja that actually take on more than one warder. The green Aja really love men, they really love men, and they will take on more than one warder for what they're doing. And this episode, Stepan explains who he was when he first met Karine, and what he was doing, how they met, and how she chose him as a friend and then as a warder, and they became exceedingly close. And the thing that struck out to me was, from the way it was depicted, she was the only green that had only one warder. So they had an even closer bond than warder to Aes Sedai. I think there was actually some actual, because they were friends first as well, I think there was some actual love factored in that one. And I think they did a great job at showcasing just how close these two were with each other.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you bring that up because I actually questioned what her Aja was because of there being only one warder in this bonding. And then coming to realize that she was still a green sister and that this bond is just that much stronger.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've looked at some of the feedback that people have had on the different chats and different things like that, and forums, and a lot of people found that this episode was slow. I saw it was rated by some as the lowest rated episode, or the second lowest rated episode, with number 5 and number 1 battling it out for the bottom spot. Which surprises me. Number 1 is the one that, like, it moved fast, but it sets the scene for so many things. And it kind of stuns me that people would rank that episode so low. But for this one had focused on world building, character development, like we said, setting the scene for moving forward with things, and also showed proof of concept. Because had they followed the book by rote, and what everyone, the way a lot of people were at first upset that they were making some changes, they were condensing things, they were changing storylines, it was a new telling or a new turning of the wheel. If they went the way it was with the books, we would still be traveling to Tarvalon. We would still be just outside of Two Rivers, though at the speed that this went. And I think this was proof of concept that if this show that had so much stuff cram-packed into it, and maybe for super fans that really understand and know what to look for, we pick up on more of the subtleties, and people still found it slow, then I think the showrunners really hit the nail on the head with condensing it the way they did.
Yeah, I agree. And to further bemoan your opinion, I feel like if we had followed the book exactly, this would have been the Trolloc attack. Like that's how much conjecture we would have gotten in the first 4 episodes worth of Two Rivers relationship building of teenagers instead of the action and story that we're getting.
Yeah, because that was when I'm introducing someone to the Wheel of Time for the first time, the books, I would always kind of tell them, get past the first 200 pages.
Yep.
Because the first 200 pages is just a lot of ordinary world building, character building, relationship building, introduction of things, and it moves at a very slow pace. And it's not, I think it's a 280 page or something like that in that, or maybe even a little bit further, before the Trolloc attack happens. Yep. And that's where, yeah, exactly, we would have been really far back, and the show would never have gotten off the ground. They would have had to have dropped the first 8 episodes for people to catch on to it. So I think, bravo to the showrunners. I think they're doing a fantastic job. They've made some great decisions. We're not going to agree with all the decisions, but one thing I did want to mention, though, chat, is you can see up above us now. So I did have a comment last week where someone said that they came in and they were like, oh, I didn't know if we could talk or if it was an interview or what it was. Yes, talk, chat, ask questions. This is a conversation about Wheel of Time. If you have anything to say, let us know. The only thing is, follow the 3 oaths up above. Don't share any future spoilers if you know anything. Don't compare the book to the broadcast, apart from what we do on this, which is just slight references back and forth. But don't go into, well, they did this and why did they do it that way? And like it's 2 different versions of the story. And do not forecast from the books. So if you do know something that is from the books, try not to. I know it seems similar to share no future spoilers, but it's slightly different. But yeah, so let's not ruin the fun for other people, because there is a lot of people that are just coming into this raw, and it's fantastic for them for that. But speaking of future of forecasting and foreshadowing and things like that, there was so much foreshadowing in this episode. I mean, absolutely massive foreshadowing, and so much and so intricate that most of it we can't even get into. We can touch upon a couple maybe, but we can't get into because once you know that it's foreshadowing, it gives the story away. If we're to say like this scene is a massive foreshadowing scene, then you're going to know right away. But that's the thing I find that I like, is that they've got foreshadowing that is immediate and foreshadowing that is extended for periods of time, right? Like the immediate foreshadowing is something that happened in a couple of episodes already, and it happened again today. And that was during the scene in Tar Valon. There's when Rand and Matt are going in to the, or Rand is walking around. All of a sudden you hear some whistling in the background. And then shortly after you hear the whistling, when the procession is going through with Logain, if you look somewhere through the crowd, you can see Paden Fane sitting in the crowd. And that's something that they've done a couple of times, where a whistle is a mark that Paden Fane is going to be showing up at some point, and to kind of look for him. And it's kind of, I don't know why, but they've almost made his character like a Where's Waldo? Where it's like, it happens, and then you're kind of like, oh, wait, there. Okay, and he's gone. So it's kind of cool that they have such rapid fire foreshadowing. But then they also have longer foreshadowing, like which was tied up in this episode, which was not tied up, but it kind of added more confusion. And if you recall, chat, in the first After the Weave, we discussed when the Aiel warrior was cut down, the stone dog. And I said that there was a big thing of foreshadowing tied into that. That was going to create some confusion down the road. And that came up in this episode. And that was, they went in close on the Aiel warrior and saw that he had red hair. And then in this episode, Rand gets to meet an amazing character, and that character looks at him and says, "Oh, you've got red hair. You're an Aielman." It's like, "No, I'm not." "Well, you can tell if someone's an Aielman if they got red hair." And he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not from, and there's this whole conversation that comes through it. So there's some kind of confusion there as to, like, Rand's from Two Rivers, but he's got red hair. So how does this kind of tie in? And there is an Eilman tie back, which is nice. But speaking of which, we got to meet some new characters. Who did we get to meet today, Billy?
Oh, we got to meet Lyle, who is an Ogier, which he's just such a phenomenal character. And I think that they really did him a lot of justice in his portrayal and his mannerisms in this episode. I don't know about you, but I always imagined Loyal having more of a horse head. So I was very interested in seeing what he was going to look like, and I was really pleasantly surprised and very, very happy.
Yeah, I imagine him, a little bit more of an elongated face, and this is a spot where we're going to compare back to the books. In the descriptions of the books, he had the long tufted eyebrows that came down, and he had, or long eyebrows, I think with beads actually, and then he had long pointy ears with tufts on the end of them that would flex and move with and show his emotion. They were really good, like, radars of his emotion. And a lot of people have complained about the fact that he doesn't have his ears, he doesn't have his eyebrows, but he has the voice. Like, everyone just loves Loyal's voice. It's just, and there's, like you said, his mannerisms, the way he talks is beautiful. But for that, I find that it's because they're using physical effects and they're not using CGI for everything. In my mind, I think that's one of the reasons why they didn't go for the big ears, because it wasn't that his, like, ears would, like, wiggle like a human's ears would. It was like the ears would actually, like, fold over, and the tufts would droop and that kind of stuff. And that's really hard to do as a practical effect if you're not, using CGI. I mean, you're an actor, you can speak to this. Like, how difficult would that effect be to have his ears do what they're supposed to do in the books?
Absolutely. It would be very, very difficult, but on top of it, it would have been very, very expensive. And the showrunners decided to put the money that they had into other visual effects and actors and things like that. So I think that it would have been impractical to add those kind of features to him. But I think what they did do was just phenomenal. And like you said, his voice is just nice and kind of sing-songy and exactly what I wanted, especially just how laid back and matter-of-factly he presents himself.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I loved how they explained the Ogiers, where, again, they're not in, like, one thing that impressed me about this show is they don't, when they info dump, they do it intelligently, and oftentimes they use exposition in ways that there's no info dumping, like when he's having the conversation with Rand and he's talking about, like, they're just having that conversation. He's like, oh, I forgot how, like, impractical human thoughts are. And, like, with this young girl, or is she a woman now? You humans age so quickly. And you're always in such a rush to go off and do these things. So it's just, and that is completely true to Loyal's character. The way he would talk, the way he would explain things as well. So they didn't do anything out of the box for the character. And it just shows the masterful writing of the series, where it can, like, really, like, in that, that they're slow thinking, they're laid back, they're kind of non-violent, non-aggressive. It takes a lot to kind of perturb them. Because even in that scene where he's talking about being, and I love the fact that Rand pulls out this heron-marked blade. He's like, when I first got to Tarvalon, children were screaming, people were chasing me, and then people started chasing me from one end of the city to another with knives. This long heron-marked blade, and he's like, you got a little knife. Like, is that a butter knife? Or, and then he's like, and I gotta say, I was actually starting to get a little bit irritated, or almost got a bit irritated. And so it just shows how calm they are. And I thought it was a fantastic thing of setting up this newer character and letting you know exactly who they are, what they stand for, and how they work.
Absolutely. And if you think back to it, he was actually foreshadowed in a previous episode when they were talking about going on an adventure and maybe they would see an Ogier.
Yes, and Dana, the Dark Friend, was actually, I think that was the scene you're referring to, where she's like, I'm so excited for all the places you're going to go to, like Tarvalon, Camlin, maybe a Stedding. And it's like, well, what's a Stedding? Because that's the other thing too. It's such a weird word that there's no, like, a Stedding has got nothing to connect back to. And to be fair, we still don't know what a Stedding is. All we know is that a Stedding is something that he left. So man. Yeah, it's great. I love how they do this foreshadowing for stuff. But we did kind of jump all over the place. So where are we here? We had, I think we can probably just follow a couple of storylines from start to finish because there is so much that happened. So starting off with the funeral for all the people that were involved. One thing that I found very interesting, I tried to look very quick. I tried to look closely in the second viewing, and maybe I'm mistaken in this, but Nynaeve was not involved in the funeral scene. So when everyone was
Correct.
standing around, she wasn't there. So
Or at
she
least
was,
not visible.
yeah. So she wasn't in the circles because there was the Aes Sedai in the inner circle and the warders were in the outer circle, which is again shows like the protective ring around. Like, it was just the symbolism of this is beautiful. And yeah, I couldn't see Nynaeve there at all anywhere. But we did learn that she is over this because we jumped forward a month. Hey, Paradox, how are you? Welcome. We did learn that it's been a month, and that in that entire month, Nynaeve has spent her entire time at the Warder's Fire. Every night she's at the Warder's Fire, eating with them, and it's amazing because we find that she's this amazingly powerful Aes Sedai, or potential Aes Sedai, a powerful channeler, and she still mistrusts the Aes Sedai so much that she spends all of her time, because she's a fighter. She's a wisdom, and she fights. Like, she's very strong. So I thought that was an interesting thing that they made a point of highlighting, that she's still with the Warders and creating a stronger bond there. And then, of course, she ends up in Tar Valon and in the White Tower. So one thing I've heard people comment about as well is that they were surprised at the lack of sisters in Tar Valon, or the lack of sisters in the White Tower. That didn't surprise me. I didn't have an issue with that, for the simple fact that they clearly stated that she was in the Warder's quarters.
They did, and in previous scenes in episodes, they have mentioned that there's a severe lack of numbers with the Aes Sedai currently. They're struggling.
Yeah, and they're scattered. But they did actually have two novices, or accepted. I don't know, but hard to tell. Two up and coming. Because if you notice, when Moiraina's coming down the stairs, there's two women walking in white going up the stairs.
Yep, they should be novices. Novices are in white. They wear a different color. I think they wear gray when they become accepted.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So that would have been. But there was a flash, but I liked the fact that they had the white armbands like crisscrossed, and the other thing, the costuming in this is fantastic.
Phenomenal.
There's so many outfits, and I'm like, I want to buy that. I want to buy that. There's just so many things I want to pick up. I love it. Paradox. You're not doing good. You're working on thumbnail and graphic novel. Wow. Oh, you're doing good. That's awesome. Great. Well, right now we're just talking about the Wheel of Time. So if you're afraid of spoilers, just to know there will be spoilers. But then afterwards we'll be talking about some ink and stuff as well. But yeah, so Nynaeve goes off and she's at the wheel. She's at Tar Valon, where, I mean, a lot of this ends up taking place there. Mm-hmm. And she has some interesting conversations with Liandrin, with Moiraine, with actually with everyone really except for Lan. She doesn't really talk to Lan that much.
And Lan actually makes a point of saying that she hasn't talked to him.
That's true.
Since she saved everyone at the cave.
Yeah, because of him. It was his death that triggered her to save everybody. And again, that Moiraine really had that comment where she's like, she healed people from dying. Like, that's something that is incredibly difficult. Not even just in the Wheel of Time world. In any fantasy thing where there's a healer, healing death, or people that are on their way to death, is one of the hardest things you can ever do as a healer. Mm-hmm. So it's impressive that they brought that forward. But then we do learn, but she's told to stay in the Warder's quarters, to stay away from everyone else. And then she has that conversation with Liandrin, who I still say, Leandrin's kind of a snake.
Absolutely.
Like, I didn't like her in the books. I don't like her in this. She's just someone that you can't trust. Like, just looking at her face, you can tell that there's something that you can't trust about her, that she's scheming. Like, she seems, I think most Reds are always kind of scheming because they're the law enforcement, right? But she always seems to be kind of scheming and up to something. And the fact that, you know, they've talked about tower politics, they've mentioned tower politics, you know that she's aware, completely aware of tower politics.
Mhm.
But instead of trying to protect Nynaeve, she is goading her into leaving where she's supposed to be. To go for a walk, go out into the gardens, go explore the libraries. And for me, that's just like, no, I can't trust you.
It's definitely saying something, and I think it's even more suspect because, not only is she goading Nynaeve, but she's also talking to other Aes Sedai, Moraine, and being just as like schemy and slimy with how she's saying things.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a two-faced political way to carry yourself, and it's just being shown so prominently in this sister.
Yeah, it's being shown beautifully. And I think, in my mind at this point, I think it's, they kind of alluded and they kind of dropped some hints at to what's going on with Leandrin and where her storyline, I think, is going to kind of go. And that is, in my mind at least, that there's obviously her and Moraine have some issues. And in that conversation that she has with Moraine, she actually says to her, or Moraine says to Leandrin, she's like, so you want her to be a red. And I think that's the thing, is that I think Leandrin is scheming behind the scenes to try to, I think she kind of sees Nynaeve as Moraine's pet right now, and she wants control of the reins. You know, she's talking
Absolutely.
about
Who
how
wouldn't?
you're not going to be here when she becomes a novice, right? You're not going to be able to look over her. Someone needs to, I think. So I think she's kind of manipulating to get Moraine or Nynaeve in as a red sister.
Absolutely. And on that point, who wouldn't want to have some semblance of control over the future of someone who just saved a dozen dying people in a cave in a flash of power?
The
I
first
mean,
time touching the power.
mhm.
Like, knowingly touching the power the first time. It was absolutely amazing. So that they really tied up that storyline in a really neat little package where it's this battle of, telling her to go grab her persimmons, or persimmon, and which I actually learned something interesting. I've had persimmon before. Have you had persimmon before?
I have not.
No. So I love trying new foods, and I tried persimmon, and the one I tried wasn't ripe. It had kind of a harder, crunchier exterior when I bit into it, and it dried my mouth out. Like, you take one bite, and it just, all the moisture in your mouth gets evaporated. Like, it just disappears. It's the weirdest fruit. So I kind of avoided it since then. And doing some research into the episode today, I realized that actually that if you're eating a persimmon and it dries out your mouth, it's because it's not ripe. It is still full of tannins, and it's the special tannin that dries your mouth out. So now I'm going to go try persimmons again. Because obviously the one I had wasn't ready to be eaten yet, if that's what it did.
It was not.
Apparently it's supposed to have more of like a sorbet kind of creamy texture.
Oh,
Now, there are some that do have a bit of crunch, and then there's others that have a bit of a more, like, that are creamier, more of a sorbet flavor. So this episode's got me not only interested in the fashion, it's got me more interested in food again as well. And
all right, episode 6, we're going to talk about persimmon recipes.
Yes. That's actually what I was thinking. We should do something special for the final episode. But yeah, so, we get to see this stuff, and we also, when we're in the White Tower, we have the conversations with Moraine and with everyone as well, and then we also have Lan's conversations with Steppen. I was in awe at that scene with Steppen being prepared for the funeral, and then going up and putting the ring. Like, that cauldron of gold and fire was just inspiring. It was so beautiful to see. I really loved it.
I agree, and it was just really emotional to see Steppen's whole kind of internal fight with just his desire to continue. He talks to Nynaeve about wanting to continue to feel pain, but then he's openly discussing with the Green Waters and Lan about maybe I will join Alana and you guys, and we can all be a happy family. But at the same time, not feeling that way at all, obviously. So I just found that
Yeah.
his thought process and emotions were very complex and very well emoted throughout this.
For such a short-lived character, he was a very impactful character, and
Mm-hmm.
they hit his story arc hard, and I think
Mm-hmm.
they did a fantastic job with it. And they used that story arc to hit so many things. Like that was something that because we know he goes to Nynaeve and gets the goat's tongue. That I thought was funny. Again, that conversation. It's not actually goat's tongue, is it? Like it's and again that kind of ties back to being this bar brawler beforehand. That doesn't have. I mean, he's gained worldly experience obviously through Karenade, but to be able to, yeah, that I just found that was really kind of a poignant thing. And the other thing I noticed in the second time going through is that, of course, he drugs Lan with the. So he knew Lan was his brother was going to come stay with him, and he poured them each a tea. But if you watch that scene closely, he never drinks his at all.
Mm-hmm.
He emotes with it, he gestures with it, but he never puts his cup to his lips. And they specifically show Lan drinking it several times. And the first time I saw that, I didn't clue in. Like
Mm-hmm.
that scene that followed afterwards kind of surprised me. I have to admit, I was very surprised when what ended up happening was what happened.
I agree. And it wasn't something that I caught the first time either. But I will admit, I was expecting the next scene. I just didn't know how he was going to do it. I didn't know if it was going to be more in a fit of passion, like maybe he was going to talk to Lyanna and then afterwards he decides that he can't go through with it and that was going to happen, or what it was. But I was expecting it. I just didn't expect it that way. I didn't
Yeah,
expect it to be so plotted, so plotted.
yeah, he really had that. It seemed like he spent the last month trying to figuring out what he was going to do because he
Yep.
steadfast said that he was going to bring the ring back. But then even that scene where he's talking to where Lan makes a comment about him joining with the other Green, and he kind of snaps at Lan, and he's like, lose your bond with Moraine and tell me how easy it is to jump to another. And that's a really good point because Lan and Moraine's bond is just as close. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I still think it's completely platonic. I don't think there's any physical relationship between the two of them. I think it's just a relationship of respect between Moraine and Lan.
I agree, although I will admit that there have been some flashes of emotion that makes me question it. But at the same time, it can just be like almost that such a close bond that almost borderlines familiar. But like you can just sometimes see just that ounce of love and respect that makes me question it sometimes when they are talking privately.
Yeah. Well, even like that scene where he just went in and knelt down and put his hand on her hand. I didn't say anything.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then there's that moment that they have with each other. But I think that was really well done for that. And I also like the fact that, again, for the subtlety and showing how he is kind of this bar brawler that got brought up into this world. And Lan, as we know, is. Why am I blanking on the name? Lan is from Melkura. Melkuri. Lan is a Melkuri. And so that was the thing that I found with that was he actually had this comment where he goes to Nynaeve and he's like, it's not actually goat's tongue, is it? And she pulls out this little sachet and it's in there. And then Lan wakes up the next morning, he goes over to the desk, and Lan's able to identify the ground up herb and know exactly what it is. So that shows
Yep.
the level of knowledge between the two different warders. One actually thought that it was made of actual goat's tongue, and the other one could look at this crumbled up herb and know exactly what it was that he had been drugged and connect the dots of like, oh no. And he goes running out of and he looks over, sees the missing blade, and goes running out of the room.
Right. And I think one of the things that all of these scenes together, stitched together in this episode, kind of portrays is how close even the warders are to each other, how close Lan was to Steppen, how close to the Greens warders, all of them are. It's very touching, especially when you go on to after Steppen kills himself and we move into the funeral scene. And you see all of the brothers standing, you see all of the sisters standing, and you see Lan kneeling at the body of Steppen. And you see not only the emotion that Lan's trying to struggle, not trying to struggle with, but is struggling with, but you also see the emotion just start to leak out of Moraine, which, as we know from now a few episodes, the bond makes it so that you feel what the other's feeling regardless of how they look.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that closeness I thought was just painted so masterfully in this episode, because it's not only your bond with the Aes Sedai, it's your bond with each other, like everyone.
It is, and I love the fact that they did that, whereas one is chosen, perhaps the closest, to mourn for everybody else. And I thought that really stood out as impactful to me as well, in the fact that all the other warders, all the other Aes Sedai, Nynaeve, everyone is just standing there stoic, watching this thing, like they did at the previous funeral, at the beginning of the episode. And then Lan is given license, or the order, to mourn for us, express our grief, let everyone, let us all do it all for us. And the only other person that's crying is Moraine. I thought that was just a beautiful, again, it shows the strength of the bond between the two, and why it's called bonding. I really love that. So I thought that was just a beautiful bookend. The two funerals to show how the Aes Sedai do things, how the warders do things, the connectivity, the brotherhood, all of that stuff tied in was so masterfully woven together. And I think while we're in Tar Valon, we should probably stay in Tar Valon and talk about Mat and Rand. I think that how they're showing Mat's descent into madness is really well done. We've seen how much he loves children and how good and kind he is to children, and then you see him rip a kid's head off when he accidentally brushes up against them when they're walking. And then he's really short and terse with Rand and tells him to stop treating him like he's his wet nurse. Right? So I think they're doing that really well.
And then he snaps at Nynaeve as well.
Yeah, that
when she goes near him. Yeah, so I agree. I think that you can definitely see almost the descent one step at a time that Mat's going through in this madness. And on top of that, we also get a sneaky little picture of what's going on with Mat when Rand and Mat are sitting on the balcony watching the procession.
Yes, that's the thing. He's really in a solid headspace with that, where, and that's the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first time in the entire television series where they actually refer to what the men and women do with the one power as channeling. Because Mat looks at Rand and says, if it turns out one of us can channel, we're not going to let the other turn to this, right? Or turn into this. And so that also kind of shows that he's not aware. He is descending into madness, and he's looking to Rand saying, hey, if one of us ever gets like this, you're going to tell me, right? And Rand's kind of like, yeah, buddy. Gotcha. But again, the same thing, when they're in the bed, and that was the thing where he looks at Rand, or he's not looking at Rand, he's looking away from Rand, and he's like, tell me I didn't kill that little girl. And Rand has to try to convince him. So he doesn't know what happened. Everything happened so quickly. We're kind of left as the viewer of oh, was it the fate, or was it what happened? And then we find out that he's in the same boat as us, where he's like, I don't know.
And that's saying something. As someone who connected with that little girl and has sisters that he wants desperately to protect, and then for him to say to Rand, tell me I didn't do this terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's madness, man.
Yeah, it's it really has this tie-in. And again, we find out that for all intents and purposes, Tom is dead. They don't have cell phones. They don't have pagers. So as far as they know, as far as we know, I mean, a fade is kind of something to go up against by yourself.
Yeah, they control 100 Trollocs, I think, is the tipping point for a fade.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's something to go toe to toe with. That's definitely going to take something to get through. But the other thing that we find too with this is we actually finally have some verbiage from the books rolling in. When Rand and Mat first walk into Tarvalon, Rand says, "Blood and ashes," and I jumped out of my seat when I heard that.
yes, fantasy swearing.
Yes, and when he gets really angry, it's blood and bloody ashes. So I mean, that's just wow. How could you be so severe? But yeah, I really like how they have that tied in there, and the fact that Loial brought. Now that was one. I think, like we discussed before, you need to suspend disbelief to a certain degree, and you need to understand that. As a viewer, as a reader, I as a writer, I expect my readers to work. I'm not going to hand everything to you. You have to connect the dots. You have to figure stuff out. You have to use your own imagination. And same thing when you're watching a show. You can't have everything handed to you. And that was one of the issues that I saw. People were like, well, Loial shows up in the room and he's got Nynaeve all of a sudden. And it's like, how did that happen? Like, how is he like, he said to Rand, like, that girl you were talking about, I found her. And, of course, it's not the girl that he was talking about when they're talking about the books, which we'll touch upon in a second. But it's when Rand and Loial first meet and he runs out and Loial's talking about how fast humans are and always in a rush. Rand says, "I will see you out there." So putting dots together, when they were outside, Loial met up with them. They had another conversation. And because even Mat wasn't shocked when Loial came in. Mat was also half dazed with a fever dream, I think. But he wasn't shocked when Loial was standing there. And again, Loial's going in about the history. Like, he's not like, there's this big grand reunion, and Loial's like, actually, having a braid is a sign of maturity. It's like, oh, like, I love his little rant in the background as he's describing this, as they all meet up together. So that was just putting two and two together. When they're outside of the procession, they made up, they had a conversation. He said, "This is who we're looking for." And then Loial was like, "Oh, okay, I'll go find her."
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you wanted, they could have spent 15 minutes watching Loial get ready and collect all of his books and then make sure the door was closed and make sure that he had, his key, and then go and double check that he had his books. I mean, we could have done that for an hour.
Yeah.
The Ogiers are not fast people. But we decided not to do that and not have the conversation afterwards because it would have been redundant.
Exactly. And it's something that, like,
so
we know who Mat and Rand are looking for. We know that, I mean, we learned that he can go, that the Ogiers can go into Tarvalon. But that was great. And that was the other thing that I found was really good too, because we have, when Rand and Loial meet, it was actually funny because I went upstairs after watching the episode because my wife isn't caught up because of the baby. And I went upstairs. My wife was like, "How's the episode?" I'm like, "Oh, it's pretty good." And she's like, "Well, it must have been because I heard you shout at one point." I'm like, I don't know if it was because of something we're about to talk about in a few minutes, or if it was because of Loial being there. There's a few things that happened that I was like, yes, finally, it's here. And Loial was definitely one of them. And I really love the fact that they have, he's always surrounded by books. He loves books. He's always writing and thinking and like just super intelligent. And the fact that, Rand walks in and he ends up finding the Crithian Cycle book and he's kind of thumbing through that. And then we see that he talks about the travels of Jane Farstrider and how, like, Rand gets a little bit despondent. And he's like, "Well, it's such a good book. Why would you be sad about this?" He's like, "Yeah, this girl I know and, actually thought she was Jane because of this." So it's just great that they were able to tie a couple of actual titles into the books and have conversations around them, and then still have Loial be like, "Oh, let me gather up all my books." And he's like, even when Loial grabs the book that Rand dropped, because I think he dropped the Crithian Cycle when Loial walked in, you can see the reverence in what she picks the book up and kind of dusts it and sets it back on the shelf. And it's just so beautifully done to show how this guy loves knowledge and past historical books and things like that. It's fantastic.
That boy loves books.
Yeah, and stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
And
I'm
talking.
very slowly. And that was something that I still need to remember. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, if you ever feel rushed, stressed, and start talking in a rush because you're feeling stressed, because you, whatever, if people want to hear what you have to say, they'll wait. And I think that's the thing with Loyal is you'll wait to hear what he has to say. But yeah, they really did that really well, and I think they brought Matt's character leaps and bounds forward. Rand's character was brought forward. I found there was more for Rand's character. I found, and also Nynaeve's character. I think there was more of setting up for this episode. It wasn't so much like there was some foreshadowing. I think for both of the characters, and there was some stuff they had set up. Or like they set up a few things that, or I'm assuming are going to come down the road, or you can kind of presume will come down the road. But again, we just see Rand's character as this same character with a bit of a twist, in that over this past month, it looks like Rand has become a little bit less stone-headed in his ways. He's a little bit more willing to listen and go along with things. For me, the sign with that was when they're walking to Tarvalon and the woman hands him a pastry or food or something, and he just grabs it and starts eating it. He's like, it's pretty good. Want it? And it's like, for that, like, that's not something, the way they set up Rand previously, that wouldn't be, like, he would kind of, like, pause. There'd be, in my mind, there'd be a little bit of a hesitation with that. And with this, he just, like, he's walked in, this awe-inspiring thing. He grabs this treat and starts eating it as they're walking. Like, he seems a lot more confident and a lot more sure of himself and kind of willing, a little more open-minded, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's great to see, because I think the idea of, cotton-headed, argumental Rand for multiple seasons just sounds like really, really boring. So to see him kind of start to get that that maturity is really nice to see, especially this early.
Yeah, and the fact that he is kind of acting like a wet nurse, like you can see that Rand is developing more of a, because you would expect from the way he was initially positioned that with Matt even being a friend, Matt acting the way he was would be kind of more of an irritant to Rand. And the fact that it's not an irritant, the fact that he's fully embracing, and he's like, I'm going to, like, he's fully embraced the wet nurse and idea and taking care of his friend, which I think is a great way that they're doing that.
And I think a part of that is the realization on his part after speaking to Tom. Like, he now doesn't think his friend is just being a jerk. He feels a responsibility to take care of his friend because they're someplace outside of their own world with, a blathering madman. So
yeah, and now it's set in his head that he may have to kill his friend, right? Like Matt specifically asked him if this is happening. And the other thing with Matt's madness, that scene with Logain was absolutely gorgeous. Mm-hmm. Logain like leering up at him, and Matt seeing all the stuff like that. And that kind of does tie back to the concept of this one power madness, where Logain was going mad with one power, and Matt is going mad. And there is this kind of, Matt hasn't had that reaction looking at anyone else that we've seen. So maybe it's because he knows that this is the false dragon and he knows what's happened to him. So I guess news travels fast. That's another thing that's kind of glossed over.
Right.
Everyone kind of knows what's happened to the false dragon. Excuse me.
Sure. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to see all the fruits and vegetables being thrown at the cage, and then on accident on Leandrin, which is always a fan favorite. But one of the things that I took away from that scene in particular is that I think we have some basic confirmation that Matt can channel. And that is just based on the fact that, at least with the Aes Sedai, they're always able to recognize a sister that can channel.
Yeah.
So I think this is showing that Logain recognizes the fact that Matt is descending into madness because he can channel.
That's it. Oh, well, that's one thing I was thinking too, though, is that how I was kind of left questioning how much Logain actually moved. Because they had him face pressed to the bars, giggling and laughing. Mm-hmm. And then immediately after, he's cut and slumped back. in the thing. So was it that he was to the bars and laughing and giggling and then threw himself back and kind of slumped back into a depressive state? Because I was thinking that it was more of kind of a mix where you saw Logain look up and make that eye contact, and there was that recognition of like, I see you. And then he kind of started that smile and that smirk. And then I took it as Matt's madness extending it to that smile and smirk to him actually leaning forward and grabbing the bars and giggling and laughing at him. And then when you kind of look back, he's just slumped over to the side. So I think it was kind of a mix of both.
That's a pretty good takeaway. I honestly didn't think of it that way. I was considering just the fact that we know that someone that has been gentle kind of goes into almost a catatonic response. And I was thinking just because he saw Matt and recognized this in him, it excited him. But then as soon as he was out of eye shot or whatever it was that had excited him, he slumped back in his catatonic state. I like your theory better.
Well, I like your theory too, though. I didn't think of that because there is that moment of recognition. Whether or not him actually grabbing the bars and laughing is madness or something that he actually did, he did make eye contact. He did make recognition. He did have that sly kind of smile. So it's just whether or not the excessiveness was reality or false. And again, they masterfully confuse you when they're doing these things. I think they do a great job with it. So yeah, I think that's kind of where Matt and Rand are kind of left off. Is that not?
Yeah, I think we need to get this bus over to the camps now.
Yeah, that was that's actually the thing I think I'm most excited about chatting about is the White Cloaks and the Tinkers and Egwene and Perrin. Perrin. And so a good tie into that, I think, is... Hey, Survivor. Yes, we're talking about the Wheel of Time, of course. How are you tonight, Survivor? So that's the one thing that I noticed is that conversation with Nynaeve and Rand in the hallway where she's talking about the Breakman fever that Egwene had as a child. And at 10 years old, how strong she was. And how powerful she was. And, I mean, we've known, apart from the one power. Sounds good, Survivor. Apart from the one power, we know that she's nervous about entering into new things, but she is strong. She has got an iron will and an iron core. And from judging from these scenes, the past 30 days kind of beat the nerves out of her a little bit. Even the fact that when we see Perrin and Aram talking, and she runs up, the way she jumps on Perrin's back, and it's so playful and it's just so carefree and stuff, and it seems like she really has kind of put some of that trepidation behind her for this. And that's a nice beginning of they showed all the characters had some subtle and some pretty major character arc changes.
Absolutely. And I think part of that ability to kind of leave the baggage behind is the fact that they're traveling with the traveling people. And I think that their way of the leaf and just their really giving and loving nature can really bolster someone like Egwene, who had those nervous tendencies, and help her develop those self-reliant traits. I think that it's no surprise that spending time with them is what helps her mature, like other people in this show. And I just think that it's really good for her. It's really good for the character, and they showed it very masterfully, especially as the episode continued.
Yeah, they did. And that was the thing, is that little brief moment of joviality is shut down pretty quick when our friends, the White Cloaks, once more arrive.
Oh, Children of the Light.
Yes. That is, again, Child Valda is... That actor does such an amazing job of portraying that role. And
absolutely.
He is... Like, there's a dichotomy with him. Like, he's so confident and has such a presence that you want to like him. But then he opens his mouth and does things that he does, and you're like, you're a really horrible human being. But there's a reason, like, I'm just kind of drawn to you. Because he just has this, like, persona. But yeah, he's a terrible human being.
Yeah, he definitely oozes with that kind of dangerous charisma. Like you feel very swayed by the words he's saying, and you think, oh, okay, he's not necessarily a bad guy, but then he turns around and says, well, I don't necessarily play by the rules.
Yeah. And he also essentially sets a pack of wolves on a litter of kittens in this when he sets the White Cloaks onto the Tinkers. Like, I love the way the Tinkers formed ranks, and like I think it showed really well what the Tinkers do and how they do, and how they defend each other and what they think, like what their philosophy is. And it showed really well just how vicious the Children of the Light can actually be.
Absolutely. And as we know, this is the handful of soldiers that what's his name?
Valda.
Valer? Valdar. This is the handful of soldiers that Valdar took away from the main contingent of the Children of the Light that ran into this group a few episodes ago. So this is even a smaller group, probably of very, very loyal soldiers of the Children of the Light, that are just let loose on people that have stated that they would rather run away than fight.
Yeah.
And yet they formed ranks, protect two kids, young adults, who they've only known, well, I guess they've known for like 30 days, but feels like they haven't known for very long.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, like that, I think it shows their persona, or the personality. They're like, you know what, they've sat at our fires, they've shared our food, they are us. Like, they're a part of us, and that we're going to defend that. And yeah, I honestly, I was kind of surprised, because I thought with Aram talking about how some Tuathana leave, and when they're 20 years old and they go off and they experience the world and they come back, I was really anticipating a storyline where Aram left with Perrin and Egwene.
Yep.
Right? And that's like, they keep doing this with Matt and Rand and Tom. I'm like, oh, they're going to be together for a while. They can do this thing. Like, no, Tom's gone. Aram's going to go off with the two of them. They're going to break. Nope. Aram stays behind. Like, it was just, every time they set up these expectations, we're like, oh yeah, this is what they're going to do. They completely throw you under the bus and do something totally different with.
Yeah, good thing you had that guy here, because that's the only way you're going to survive the next 5 minutes. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And I think that was, I mean, I love the fact that he made reference to the fact that the children won't hurt the Tuathana, or won't kill the Tuathana people. They'll obviously hurt them, but he won't kill them. Why, we don't know.
And they do.
All right, there's obviously a conflict in their ideologies with the light versus the leaf. There's that whole conversation that they had, so there's obviously conflict there. So it's going to be curious to see why the children won't hurt or won't kill the Tinkers or the traveling people.
And I know this is something that people have been very vocal about, is why they didn't have an explanation given now. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that, this is... there was only so much time in this episode to put everything that they needed to hit, and we assuredly will find out why later down the road.
Oh yeah,
there's no way we're gonna just gloss over it, but don't worry about not knowing now.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, it is going to come. We're going to learn about that, and then we see. And the other thing with that too, before the grandmother or the elder female of the traveling people gets backhanded by a child Valda, he says to her, "What are you going to do?" And then she actually has this long staff, and she drops it. And because that's how nonviolent they are, like this, it literally is a walking stick, and she just drops it in the link arms. And that's like, I found that was a very poignant scene. But then Perrin and Egwene are captured, and again they use nudity masterfully without actually using nudity. I really appreciate the fact that so far the only thing that we've seen in this entire 5 episodes, like 5 hours of show running, is Lan's butt.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but that's the only nudity that's there. And Rosamund Pike, when she was interviewed, she said that there is some nudity throughout the series, but there's a lot more male nudity than there is female nudity. And this scene with Egwene, I found, was really well done. Like, the camera scene shots were cut at just the right time, and it was showed The nudity was showed to show her embarrassment, her humiliation, the lack of control that she had, but they didn't go to a crazy degree with it.
Yeah, they didn't go to an exploitive measure with how they were framing it. It is something that I would definitely warn people. Even though it really was artful and masterfully done, it is potentially a trigger. They were really visually rough with this girl, and it really looked like things could go in another direction very easily. Ultimately, they didn't. It was just some harsh scrubbing and some dressing, but I was very concerned for a good 2 or 3 minutes, just coming from other media that might not have taken that scenery, that scene very masterfully as they did with this.
Yeah, and I found that they create tension scenes like that. For a quick side note on that, same thing with the scene with Nynaeve and Stepan. When Stepan comes in with a bottle of alcohol into her room and hides the bottle behind his back and says, "Can you go do this?" And they like that camera angle of him against the door holding the bottle of alcohol and her fully bent over rummaging through her bag. And the pit of my stomach, I was like, they're not going to have him in his like grief and madness or something rush in on her and try to grab her, are they? And they didn't. Right. But that scene was shot in such a way that that became a possibility in your mind. And then they went nowhere near it. I mean, it was a very loving, tender scene where she even like holds his hands at the end and has that conversation. So I think they do that well. But going back to this, Absolutely. So Egwene is treated extremely roughly, and she's tied to the chair. And then Perrin's brought in. And to me, like, that's... I don't know, maybe it was just because of the way that scene was framed or the tent flap or whatever it was, but Perrin looked like you actually got to see Perrin's size.
Yeah, he looked big
in that scene. Like, he was looming when he came through, even though he was bound and tied and everything. So again, I think that scene was great because we really see that Child Valda has killed multiple Aes Sedai and is very well versed. It's almost like this is his shtick. The Children of the Light do all these various of other things that they do, but it seems like for him, his role, his mission in life is to solely hunt and kill Aes Sedai, and he's learned everything he can about them. He even knows the apprentices and how they, like the novices and accepted, and like he knows the steps, he knows how they do everything and how they think and how they work.
Yeah, the best way to hunt your prey is to know how they eat, sleep, and live every day. So it makes perfect sense, and it really goes with that same like oozy charisma that he's shown throughout this whole scene and everything. Touching upon the entrance of Perrin, and one of the things that the questioner says is that throughout these episodes and throughout the travels that Egwene and Perrin had with the traveling people, I never would have mistaken Perrin as Egwene's warder until that scene when he walked in and he just seemed so huge and so protective. And it was just that moment of like being snapped into reality of, oh, yeah, of course this guy thinks that she's Aes Sedai. Her warder looks like a madman.
Yeah.
Like, I was just floored by how well they did that.
Yeah, that's a very good scene with that. And that's another thing with the entrance. As soon as Perrin is brought in, and we're going to get to this point, but as soon as Perrin is brought in, the background audio changes. And all of a sudden, if you listen very closely, you can once more hear wolves howling in the background, like off in the distance. And that was, I don't think, it was my second viewing before I realized just how early you hear the wolves howling.
Yep.
But then Child Valda does this great job of, Child Valda does this great job of pitting the two against each other. Of like trying to get it, like, one is going to die, the other. In my mind, he's going to kill them both. Like, one way or the other.
I mean, yes, most likely. I would assume that would be his play, especially when he says that he doesn't play by the rules. Like, why does he care? But I don't know. I felt that he was actually very sincere with that.
But for me though, like he has said that she seems very strong, and that he knows that she can at least touch, and that she can channel. And he even says like it would be a shame because you would have made a great Aes Sedai because of like your strength. So if she didn't channel and he was convinced that she could, and he killed Perrin, do you really think he would have let her out into the world to go to the White Tower and become an Aes Sedai?
So I think that if he ended up killing Perrin and she survived it, so I think what he was banking on was a bond there between a warder and an Aes Sedai, and thus the pain and suffering of his death being what gives her away if they went that direction. So I think that if he had some kind of feeling or truth that she was Aes Sedai from her warder dying, then yeah, absolutely, she's dead too.
Yeah.
But if he just kills him and she's like, "You're a monster," maybe he just keeps tabs on her. I don't know, but I don't
Maybe.
feel like he's got any reason to just kill a girl.
Or at least cut her hands off just in case.
Yeah, maybe that. You never know.
Yeah, but that's the thing I found. Like the talking about how strong Ygritte was, and then having that scene where she is in front of this child of the light, and one of the most cruel, vicious ones, and she tells him to go pound salt, and like just tells him off, like to his
Oh yeah.
face. She's like, "You're gonna fine, kill me." Like, it's just the strength of will that she had in that scene was masterful. And how they showed that, and then the other thing with that scene too is, the anointing of the blade with wine. I don't know. I don't think it was enough alcohol to sterilize it. And I mean, if he's trying to bleed someone to death, why would you sterilize it anyways? I think that was more of a symbolic anointing of the blade, like a religious
Yep.
kind of thing. And I think again too, the cutting of Perrin was again trying to test if there was a bond. If he's cutting his
Agreed.
back open, is she going to react? And how is that going to play out? But I found that the setup for that whole thing and getting him cut, and again, I think he still kind of has his mind made up when he leaves the tent to go talk, or for them to lead them to talk. And I found it interesting that instead of trying to talk their way out of it, they have a very personal conversation, and Perrin, for lack of a better term, confesses what happened to his wife.
Yep, exactly. It finally comes out. We've been waiting 5 episodes for it to come out, and it finally came out in duress while they're both tied to their respective chair type things. And he admits that he's been harboring this guilt for the past 30 days and that he deserves to die.
Yep. And I have to say, I've seen some people complain that they didn't like the way Green responded to it or how it was done, but for me, that I think that was done perfectly. And again, in my mind, Perrin didn't do anything wrong. Not saying that everyone can go around killing their wife, but he was in the heat of a battle. The entire world outside of him is exploding. There's blood and cries and fire and roars and all this stuff happening. He's in this small little blacksmith shop fighting a Trolloc. He's in there with his wife. And then he hears someone come up, run up behind him, and he swings his axe. And it happened to be his wife. A terrible, terrible tragedy. But he didn't murder her. He didn't go out of his way to kill her and get her out of his life. It was 100% an accident in the heat of a battle.
And it's not like he did it and then shrugged and then went on with his life. He once he realized what happened, he tried to save her, was unable, and grieved. There was no part of that screams this is something that you need to be punished for. And I think that Egwene's reaction to hearing this, albeit she came to her decision and her words very quickly, it's TV. That they don't have time for the character to sit there and think about what she's going to say and how she's going to react.
Yeah.
And it was appropriate for what happened. This was, like you said, heat of a battle. If he didn't turn around and swing at the Trolloc behind him, he was dead.
Yeah. And then his wife, in turn, would probably be dead as well. The other aspect of it, too, is They're being tortured. There's not,
Yep.
this guy is coming back at any moment. She's not going to sit there and be like, oh my, I can't believe you did that. She is going to say what she needs to do to continue this forward, to get his head back in the game so that he's ready to fight that for whatever is planned, or that he's, like, it's, I'm sure this conversation is going to be brought back up again. I don't think this is just going to be oh no, that's not your fault. Okay, let's go have tea. It was,
Absolutely.
yeah, like she's smart. She's quick on her feet, and I think, she responded quickly, and I think that's because she knew she needed to move this, get that lump out of his throat, so that they can move on to the next.
Parent just opened the onion up, and they will deal with the stew afterwards, but they don't need to deal with it right now. They need to survive.
Yeah, exactly. And survive they did. So Child Valda comes back in, and Egwene ends up channeling. But the thing that I found an interesting setup to that was the fact that he actually said to her, because we keep hearing how powerful Egwene is and getting hints at how powerful Egwene is with the one power, and the fact that he says that he's been told that using the hands and using the words is that for an Aes Sedai to channel is actually a crutch. And the fact that this young girl who just learned that she can channel, we found out that she's stronger than the dragon, the false dragon, and now she channels with her hands bound. And for literally, unless something happened over the past 30 days, for the second time, she's channeling.
Yep.
And she's able to do so without words, without using her hands. That shows a good level of power that she has.
Yeah, that's power. And not only does she not use her hands, and I don't think she spoke either, but she did 2 spells. Like, this girl is amazing.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the spells, that was something that... is it just me, or did it appear... Because when she throws the little mini fireball, like the little pff at him, it didn't dissipate in the air and go up in a puff of smoke. It seemed like it hit something. Like it almost hit a shield, an invisible shield around him. And then he is standing, I mean, not to mention the fact that he's got, we know at least 7 rings of sisters that he's killed. And this guy is going out and actively hunting these dangerous Aes Sedai and their warders. Mm-hmm. And though most of the rings I noticed were red, so there's no warders involved. But he's actively hunting one of the most dangerous prey you can ever come across. And he is taunting someone that he thinks can channel, that he thinks is an Aes Sedai, to attack him. And stands there calmly while he sees her about to try to do something. And then it goes off in front of him, and then he laughs and says, "You're going to need something much stronger than that to hurt me." To me, that makes me think that he's got some kind of protection.
Yeah, I would agree. So I didn't notice anything about it dissipating in front of him. I thought it hit him, but can completely see what you mean when you say that it kind of looked like it hit a shield or something.
Looked like it stopped about a foot in front of him.
Right, but I think what's very interesting about this is the fact that you're right. He didn't flinch at all. And I don't know about you, but fire coming at my face, I don't want to get burned. Like, fire's not something you play with. And that guy was stony. That guy was all balls right there. And that makes me think that he's got something going on. Because how do you stand toe to toe with powerful sisters and not burn up?
Yeah. I mean, there's the element of surprise, but that'll only get you so far. Right? And if he's out hunting and they capture them, like unless you're grabbing them and automatically cutting their hands off, and even still at that, it seems like cutting the hands off is just something that he does as kind of a lark, because as far as he's concerned, you don't need your hands to channel.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something interesting going on there. What it is, don't know.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing is that, like you said, Egwene used a separate weave and burned out Perrin's ropes. And then we got to see Perrin turn into a rage monster, which is great.
Loved it. So as the scene was unfolding, I was really hoping that she was just going to purposely miss him. I was hoping that she was just going to go whoopsie and hit the ropes. So when it hit him or hit in front of him, I was like, oh no, that's so bad. But then when they changed the camera angle and showed that the ropes were had been hit and that they were burning up, and then Perrin just Hulk smashes out of them. I I got so excited.
Yeah.
I stood up.
Yeah.
I had to. I couldn't sit
Like
down anymore.
yeah, there was a few. I don't know when I exclaimed verbally when my wife was like, it was must have been good because there was so many things that made me want to jump out of my seat or make me jump out of my seat. But part of that as well is Perrin's eyes. That torture scene, the beyond the fact that it was a beautiful color, it was golden color,
Yeah.
but you know, as this whole scene with Child Valda is playing out, you hear the wolves louder and louder as they're getting closer and closer. And you see Perrin's eyes when he is in pain or when he's being tortured or when he's in a rage, his eyes turn to this golden color, which of course we see mirrored in the wolf's eyes as they're trying to run away. And the wolves came in. So before we get to the wolves, that attack, like even Child Valda was just like, he actually says, like, what are you? When he sees Perrin's eyes, he's like, what are you? And that gives Egwene the perfect time to get him in the shoulder.
Yeah, I love a properly stab in the right shoulder, not the left shoulder this time.
Oh, that's right.
A,
Good point.
A nice stab in the shoulder. Gonna just have to keep that in the tally now. Yeah, I loved it. There was obviously recognition of something being different about Perrin, but we still don't necessarily know what it is. We just know that he has some kind of really cool, like Rumpelstiltskin looking eyes, and the wolves, as he says while they're leaving, won't bother them.
Yeah, they're not going to hurt us. And I think, I mean, they showed when the wolf was snarling and snapping at them, and they showed the wolf's eyes, and they were the same color. So there's some connection. There's some kind of, I don't know if he's got some kind of bond. I mean, the wheel spits souls back out as it goes, right? Maybe he was a wolf in a past life.
Maybe.
I don't know. But the thing is that there's some kind of connection. And to me, it almost seemed like there was an unspoken communication. Like the wolf was, well, not unspoken. The wolf was snarling, snapping, and growling, and Perrin was just kind of stopping and looking at him. And then he's like, yeah, they're not going to hurt us. And I was kind of left like, did he just talk to the wolf? Or did he just, or could it be that for the third time, he's got this wolf snarling and growling and freaking out in front of him, and then turns and walks away? And maybe that's just like, you know what, this is the third time I've been confronted with this wolf. It's not going to hurt us.
Yeah, this wolf is, this is just what he does. It's a Friday night. This wolf snarls. Let's go.
But there's something that's there, and I think that's really cool that we have this new mystery with Perrin, and that we have something a little bit more, because Perrin was kind of sitting in the shadows a little bit there. He was this tortured soul being brought up to this point, and now we actually kind of get, because we know that they're all Taveran, right? And there was really nothing that really popped with Perrin to set him apart as special the way everyone else did. And I mean, still with Rand, there's still this kind of ambiguity
it's kind of
as to whether or not
hard.
Like there's anything with him. I'm still kind of waiting to see how that's going to play out. Apart from the fact that, I mean, if it turns out that he is an Aelman, then he's an awesome soldier.
Yeah,
he's a wicked fighter.
That's also cool.
Right? Like that's great. Maybe that's his thing. Maybe that he can fight really well.
I will argue though, that's no gold eyes.
No, those eyes. And again, that's one of the things, like, I love Perrin's character. He's just this, I've always been into blacksmithing. I'm a big fan of the Dragonlance novels.
Really?
Yeah, Wheel of Time. But growing up, there's the Dragonlance novels that kind of got me into fantasy and that kind of stuff. And there was a character, Rassilon, that had gold eyes.
Oh, yes.
So the golden hourglass eyes. So this whole thing of like the changed eye color is a big thing in stories, and I really appreciate that. So I have to say, of all the characters that went through a change or a character arc evolution, it was, I mean, in the last episode, Egwene and Perrin didn't really have a lot of character arc. This one, they had the most of all of them. Like, they really, except for maybe Steppen, they really threw, for main characters, they really, like, just leapt forward and left us with even more questions.
Absolutely.
One of the ones I had was, why would she not kill him? Why would she stab him in the shoulder?
It's a good question. I assume it's just chaos. You start to hear the wolves, everything's kind of going to hell. Perrin just knocked him down, and he was like, "What are you?" So she just
Yeah.
stabs him and goes, "It's time to get out of here."
Yeah, that's it. And like I said, there's going to be things there's going to be little glitches or things that maybe need to be explained down the road. But my big question was when they're having that conversation, when she's burning things up and Perrin is being cut, she's looking at Perrin, and Perrin is looking kind of in her direction. Did she not see his eyes change?
It's a
When
good
they
question.
stood at the end, I mean, she had to have because Valda was looking right into his eyes, and his eyes were orange or glowing golden.
Right. I mean, I guess you could argue that he was far enough away that maybe she wouldn't recognize that they were different per se. Valder was like on top of them or under him when he stood up and said, "What are you?" So he was right up in his grill when the change happened. Egwene wasn't.
That's true.
But I do agree that she probably saw it at the end when all this was happening.
Yeah. And it's also not, again, one of those, it's not really a time to be like, oh, wait a minute, did you get contacts?
Yeah. Oh, that's weird. I thought your eyes were green.
But all that being said, there's some people found that this episode was kind of slow. From a writer's perspective, I found it tucked along at a beautiful pace and
Agreed.
was, it was character building, it was character development, it was world building, it was explaining, it was setting stuff up for down the road. And this episode left me very excited for some of the future storylines.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same way. I definitely felt like it was a slower episode the first time I saw it. And the second time when I had a chance to really digest everything I was seeing, I was impressed by how fast and how much was going on. This series really just lends itself to how much lore is readily available, just sitting out in the open for you that you don't even know is sitting there. And one of the things that I would recommend to anyone is that when you're watching it on Prime and you use the X-ray feature, they do give a lot of little tidbits of information in the thing. During one of the scenes, when I paused it to see who was in the scene, it gives a little excerpt about the novices and the accepted in Tarvalon, which is just information that you won't necessarily have if you don't take a quick look.
Yeah, or if you haven't read the books. But yeah, and that's the one thing that I've never seen this. Maybe I'm dissecting this a lot harder than I have any other series. Well, I definitely am. But I've never before that I can remember seen a series where you really have to pay attention to everything that is happening and everything that is being said. Each episode is like an Aes Sedai, where you have to look around all the nooks and crannies and read between all the lines to pick up, because there is so many tidbits and bits of information and foreshadowings and hints and clues and things like that I guarantee if by the time we hit episode 8 and the end of the first season, you go back and watch from episode 1 all the way through again, you're going to spend a lot of your time going, oh.
Yep. Absolutely. And to just jump on your point, much like an Aes Sedai, the series never lies to you, but boy, does it bend the truth right in front of your eyes.
It does. Now, that's the thing I have to say, chat, is in agreement with the 3 oaths that we have up above and the oath that Billy and I have taken with each other. We're not going to spoil things. However, there is a lot of stuff that happened in this episode that we couldn't talk about because they are massive clues, massive hints to things that are coming down the road. And even just touching upon it will let you know big secrets, big breaks. Including the fact that there was, I think as far as I'll go, is that there was a really big hint at who the dragon is.
Absolutely.
In this episode.
Huge.
A massive hint. And if you know, and you'll pick up on it. But I can't wait for the next. Apparently, so from what I've heard from an interview with, is it Raph or Rafe? Episode 6 is a wild ride. Like from Edo Rafe's mouth, it was episode 6, and even Brandon Saunderson said that episode 6. So the next episode is one for the record books. So it's going to be an interesting episode to see.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait. These weeks are so long now. And what my biggest question right now, apart from Who is the Dragon Reborn, is how long are they going to go between seasons?
Oh, it's gonna be too long, no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, if we read the books, you had to wait 2 or 3 years between each book. So, actually, that's 14 books, 31 years. Yeah, it's about 2 years.
Yeah.
Between each book that you had to wait, give or take.
And it was great though, because you got to a point around I want to say it was like the 6th or 7th book, when you go back to read the whole series to get ready for the new book, you just didn't have enough time in between the releases of the book.
Yeah.
To get through them all.
That was it. And that's where, again, it gets to the point where you kind of, I think, again, around book 6 or 7, you start at book 2, and then you start rereading at book 3, and you start rereading. But I mean, again, by that point, you've reread the other books 6 or 7 times. You know what's happening, and it's great. So, well, thank you very much again for joining me for this tonight, Billy. I appreciate it. We managed to keep it a little bit more on cue for time. I think we can still...
We're doing better.
A little bit. But it's a new show for the Wheel of Time and After the Weave. And there's just so much stuff to talk about. And I think that's a good mark. The fact that you can have a conversation and have it just explode out for this. Like, there's just so many things to talk about. So if anyone that's watching this now or in future, hello future people, if you have anything that you'd like to see or anything that you'd like to suggest for us to do with these chats, by all means, let me know. Send me a message on Discord or Twitch, and or even through my website, thecalmscribe.ca, and we can look at building this up even further. And past episodes are available as video on demand on my Twitch channel and on my YouTube channel and on my website as well, actually. There we go. Welcome back, Paradox. Welcome. So with that, thank you very much, Billy. We're going to be back again on next Monday to talk about things. We'll connect again throughout the week if your week gets a little bit less hectic and busy for you.
Oh, I hope so.
And we'll take it from there. Thank you for the chat. I greatly appreciate it. And again, we're going to have someone join us at some point in the future, and we'll go on. So enjoy the rest of your night. And are you going to stick around for a little bit in the stream and look at some of the inks, or are you just going to go
absolutely.
and take a breath?
Both.
Excellent.